No, so what I think is happening, there's a wavelength, so similar to, I'm not saying it is the same as sound, but let's use that probably as an analogy to try explain myself as best I can. But there's a wave, a pulsating up and down wave, like a sine wave or
Uh-huh.
whatever you want to call it, um, uh, at a certain frequency. And that's
Uh-huh.
exciting. Whatever it's exciting, I don't know what it is exciting, but whatever it's exciting would give a certain amount of color, or it has information in it, almost like a Morse code. And yeah, you would understand, your brain would
Hmm.
understand what it's receiving. Um, the reason why I said give me a minute to think about this is because I was just trying to wrap my head around the whole photons thing. As far as I understand as well, with that is there's an amount of vibrations in an amount of vibration. So, say we have one vibration, within that vibration, there's more vibrations, um, which calculates to that one whole vibration. So, for instance, if I have one apple and it's cut in two, it's two pieces of smaller apples, um, that creates one big apple, which is why you see a full apple. Um, that's probably a shitty analogy, but there's more vibrations within a vibration to create one big wavelength. So hopefully that makes sense. But it's all
Yeah.
got to do with a wavelength,
Right.
and yeah, that's going through whatever medium it's going through, and it's exciting, whatever it's exciting, to give us that information that's being presented.
Yeah. So my question would be, what's waving, right? It's a wavelength. So what's waving?
Yeah, so that's why I'm finding your guys' discussion very interesting. So I was looking into refraction, as well, to see if it makes any sense to me. Because you can chat to scientists, you can chat to different people about this. It's a very difficult or very touchy subject. But the more I'm looking into this, there's a boundary between different mediums. And I know this is going to sound like I'm diverging. I'm not diverging. I'm just trying to make a point here. There's a
Sure.
boundary layer between mediums. So if I've got a more dense medium and a less dense medium, there's a boundary layer between the two. It's man, there's a name for it. I'll get the name for you now. You can Google it as well once I send you the name. But that boundary layer, it is technically measurable. There's a heat difference between it, but I don't even know if it's physical. I think that is where this medium is traveling in, or the light is actually traveling. That's what it is exciting. It's the same medium that separates, or it's the same material, or existence. Um, what separates different mediums from each other. Uh, I can't give you a jar of it though, but it is there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not a bad way to look at it, I guess, right? It's the uh yeah, I know what you're saying.
I'm going to try get you this name. I did write it down there. I just want to find it in my notes here.
And that reminds me a little bit of uh Newton's idea of the ether. And here's the thing, the word ether, there's a problem with that term because it's very similar to light, right? There's many people have different variations of what they call or consider ether. Sometimes it can just be an application of the word can be placed to represent air as well, right? Like um, certain people will just associate that term with air, which like a replacement for the term air. And many people had different ideas as to various ethers, right? Multiples. There's four different ethers. There's six different ethers, and these different ethers are blah blah blah. So the term itself has kind of been used to represent many different things. But typically, when like Dyslow or Witsit or myself are talking about the ether, we're talking mainly about what would be considered the energetic background medium that allows for the spatial and counterspatial realms to exist to begin with, right? It is the I don't even know the primordial essence of energy that allows for the interplay or the dance of all of the various vibrations that we experience as our reality. Because when you break everything down to its most base level, even the mainstream will admit that everything is just energetic vibrations. And if
I
there's
got you.
energetic vibrations, what is being vibrated? And what we're
Uh,
saying is being vibrated is what we would consider the ether, this energetic background medium that seems to have two different conjugate natures to it. What the magnetic and the dielectric, and as one of those is more predominant than the other, you get movement, you get spatial, like the spatial existence comes out of like magnetism allows for that geometry to um, allows for the spatial geometry to be able to sustain itself
I,
um,
I got
within
you.
the ether.
So, so that layer that I was talking about is called the interface layer. And when you explaining the way you're explaining it, it sounds a lot like, to me at least, it sounds as if you are talking about an interface layer, but that interface layer is everywhere. The,
Okay.
yeah, how do you say it? It has to be there for there to be anything. um, you can take different mediums and you can go take let's say space is real just for the argument of this discussion, that you would still medium would still be separated in there. You can put in honey and water, for instance, they will be separated. Oil and water will be separated. Sugar water and water, they all be separated. Hot water, cold water, they're all going to have eventually an interface layer in them. um, that interface layer is what's separating the two different mediums, which I would say is the separate vibrations. Um, that's the boundary layer, and where all this vibration is taking place. And if you guys haven't looked into it, I know it's far fetched. It's just it's part of the research that I've been doing, and to me at least, it seems that there's something to do with this interface layer between mediums, where all vibration, where existence takes place,
Mm-hmm.
is there. And yeah, I've been trying to get in, trying to find papers about it, but there's very little. Well, yeah, there's research into it, but there's I haven't found papers regarding it yet, uh,
I
except that
think
I
the
found.
biggest manifestations that we see of that, right? One that we can actually kind of work with on a scale that everybody can comprehend would be the idea behind a magnetic field, right? So if you take magnets that are repulsing one another and you try to and you kind of move them around close to one another and you feel this resistance, it almost feels jelly like, right? What is there between those two things that is actively trying to ensure that they do not connect with one another, right? And that
Brilliant. Yeah,
and that
brilliant.
interface boundary, right? That magnetic field is opening up within that spatial realm that we can't see, right? Nobody really has a good explanation as to what it is. We just know that it is. And I think that what you're speaking about is taking place at every single level of interaction when it comes to frequency and vibration. There is an establishment of these little, for lack of a better term, like magnetic fields that are either attracting or repulsing and keeping things together, allowing them to meld together, or keeping a slight repulsion between them.
Correct. I'm glad you brought up the magnetism. I myself, I sell. I've got an online store, and I've moved away from the tech products now. I realized I had still two speakers left in stock here. So I've been trying to play around with magnets and water and light and things like that. I've been researching different little fun experiments to do with water, light, and magnets, or just air and magnets and things like that, because I would love to try prove my hypothesis regarding that. I believe with what I've been researching, this interface layer is where the vibration's taking place, and yeah, you actually hit the nail on the head with magnetism. I think there's definitely something to do with that, and that's why I love the discussion. I myself, I'm sorry to say, I'm not a flat earther. I'm probably a no earther, like I always
Yep.
say it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fine.
I just, yeah, I think our world is rendered, or we only experience what we experience within our magnetic field that we are in.
Magnet, you have to have that mass vibrations to begin with, motion, and that motion, that disharmony causes change or movement, and that change or movement of a disharmony of a vibration, that vibratory pattern is always going to try to seek back to its harmony. So there's harmony and disharmony, and the disharmony is what causes motion or movement. But the vibrations themselves are what actually create the geometry of the spatial realm in which we reside. And there's a mediation of all of those. And all of it is excitations within the background medium. All of it. The
So
background energetic medium is being vibrated at all of these points. Light just happens to be one thing that we deal with that is way closer to the etheric, can't touch it kind of idea or concept, but it's still a vibration within the medium, the same way that anything solid, anything that you have, even the mainstream will tell you those, it's comprised of atoms that are 99% space or whatever. There's 99% nothing and less than 1% of quote unquote something. It's just an establishment of a vibration to where, um, actually somebody's even dubbed material as hard light, meaning the vibration just gets to be to a certain point to where it completely collapses into not collapses, but expands into the material realm as a full physical material that we can touch and interact with.
so I would agree with a lot of what you said, except for calling it a background medium. I don't. The more I'm looking into it, I don't think it's a background medium. I think it is just the medium. Um,
Yeah.
its existence. Well, it is required for us to have a. Oh no, it's not even required. Man, it's beyond my comprehension of what it actually is. However, there's something there, but I don't think it's background.
What if
I think. What?
So do you just have an issue with kind of the semantics of me saying background?
Yeah, probably not. No, I don't want to be pedantic like that.
That's fine. You can be.
Yeah, no, no, no. I don't like that way of discussing things, because that closes doors. Um,
Sure.
uh, um, I just don't think it is something that should be seen as everything else is happening and then this is still there. I think everything is happening because it is there. Um, so it's almost a complete reverse. If you understand what I'm saying, if anything, I'll say it's the foreground, not the background.
Well, in order for
It
something
is
to
the
be
essence
there,
that permeates everything, right? Like it everything is a manifestation of some sort of modality of the ether. Everything that we interact with.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree there.
I got a different outlook on it. Can you guys hear me at all?
We got you.
Yeah. When you're done with the conversation, I don't want to interrupt. I just had a question for Witsit. Let me add one thing real quick to the thing.
Uh,
What if the magnet is a converter of different current to a direct current from the magnet? Like it just switches, like it takes in so much, like a load, and then whatever it can put it off and bear it to any other object, it's going to get that reaction. So it's like a converter. It takes one thing, it converts it to another. Just like when you rub the copper or anything past it, it gets the electricity or the energy from it, the magnet. And you said that jelly field, so maybe it's taking in and putting out what other things can't in a rate that other things can't. And that's what makes a magnet a magnet.
If I'm not mistaken, everything gives off some sort of magnetic field. Correct me if I'm wrong here, saying that. Am I wrong in saying that everything gives a magnetic field?
I just think it's electricity. It's all just a load. It
Well,
gets a big load.
electricity
It
gives.
can influence so much. Go
You
ahead, sir.
can't have electricity without magnetism. Like,
Okay. Okay. So the reason why I'm saying that is, yeah, I've been looking into this topic, and I'm trying to understand refraction. I think refraction has got or not refraction. I think what we see, um, and yeah, cause part of the cause is refraction, but I think why things happen at certain distances is a cause of this magnetic field. If it's from the being that's viewing it, or the device that's viewing it, such as a camera, um, that's giving some sort of field which is separating mediums. You get both horizontal mediums as well as vertical mediums. Um, some people disagree, but you can research it. There is such thing as vertical mediums. It's not as distinguished or prominent as a horizontal medium, but you do get them vertically. Um, so the more I'm looking into it, I'm trying to understand the whole magnetism thing. But if you take a very large magnet and you take a little magnet, that jelly field is not as intense as if you take two magnets that are the same. There's quite an awesome jelly feel to it. And when I take these two speakers and I try to push them against each other, it's actually amazing feel to it. So each being or device will generate its own magnetic field, which is once again going to excite that medium to an extent where I'm saying it's that interface layer. Where you're going to get a different medium and you're going to see at a different distance. So I think that's also the reason being why we only see to a certain distance, not only because of our eyes, but because of where your magnetic field is hitting the net interface layer and where refraction would take place. But yeah, carry on, guys. I got long-winded.
interesting.
It's
Yeah,
just part of the research that I'm busy with, so
that's
and
cool.
experiments and things.
That's an interesting concept. So yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dysa.
Nah, it's cool, man. I think I got to get to my next job here. I'll just maybe when I come back or something, I can try to, if Witsit's still here, I can ask him.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I guess he's here. I haven't heard him yet. Let me
Yeah, he's
check.
here, but he's on mute.
Oh, yep.
So, Beerman, do you think because I've heard a claim from quite a prominent person that the Earth is both a globe and it's flat. Are you not one of those people, are you?
Um, when it comes to the globe claim of a physical round Earth, and you can walk from the north to the South Pole and back to the North Pole, I don't think it in that way. No. Um, when it comes to a globe Earth, if you get to a certain height, I think it is probable. But yeah, I think that's a discussion outside of this Discord. I don't feel like the name calling ridicules and things like that. I would prefer that in a separate private Discord, because that's going to be speculation and philosophy. But yeah, I think there's something to it. But the physical part, that's what I'm questioning.
Well, I mean, it's either curving or it's not. I mean, to me, I don't know. If you're just saying I don't know, I'm totally fine with that, and I'm not challenging you. I'm not saying, look, let's debate it out. Not at all, because Geo, explicitly says that we don't. You don't need to do that. That's why I love
No,
it here so much.
so when it's curving and you don't think it's curving, that's cool. I think it does curve to a certain extent, but when you're within the same medium or within the same magnetic field, there's going to be no curve. For instance, I can take a bowl of water and I can curve something behind it. Uh, is that item actually curving? No, it's not. if I'm in that medium, will I experience it that way? I think I might actually. But that's why I say to explain myself better, I wouldn't want to do it in an open Discord like this. It's just too dangerous
Hey,
for my own well being.
hey, I got 5 minutes. Witsit, are you there? All right, never mind. He's probably busy.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
look, the thing is, I'm happy for the world to be a globe. I just haven't seen sufficient evidence for that. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think it's the surface that is. I think it might be even like you're alluding to, Beerman. Like if we wanted to take an overall of this existence, I mean, I don't know what portion we're able to see within the overall larger picture, but I think that the establishment of kind of that spatial barrier that we were talking about with the magnetic field, that geometry is a torus pattern which would could be considered overall spherically shaped. So
correct. I actually had a very awesome discussion with one of Dan's friends, Dan the Waterman. His friend is a glober, which was also quite awesome to have the discussion that way. That he thought out of the box as well. And we had a discussion about the gravitational lensing and Einstein's theories and that, which ties in a lot with my research with refraction. And I bring this up quite often in these. Discords or preferably private chats because I hate the name calling. But when you take photographs of water droplets, you'll see the whole area is refracted into a water droplet.
yep.
If you existed inside that water droplet, if your brain was inside that water droplet, you would experience it the way that light is refracted in that water droplet. Um, Inside that water droplet, you on a level plane, everything is linear, but outside of that water droplet, it appears curved because the water droplet is curved. So that is my point of saying, is it curved? No. But can it be curved? Yes. But like I say, for me to go very deep into that, I would prefer it one-on-one way, because I can ramble and I can share my whole philosophy on it, but it will take me quite a lot to discuss about, and then I don't feel like the name calling.
Yeah, my idea or concept of what they call gravitational lensing is exactly kind of what you're talking about, some sort of similarity to a refraction. And the refraction is because that uh, object, right? And this is always talking about celestial objects, right? And we don't really have the ability to quote unquote science this and prove it out through experimentation, no matter what somebody tries to tell you. But it appears as though what's taking place in what they call gravitational lensing is a refraction due to the mass having what would appear to be a um, like a three-dimensional indentation in the ether.
Correct. If you look into interface layers, you would see between every time there's a change in medium, there's an interface layer. That interface layer, that change of medium, there's a meniscus, and that's where the bend. Well, I don't want to say bending of light, but that's where the severe changing of direction of light takes place, and various different things happen if you look into it. Yeah, that is where I would agree with you. This is what Einstein's gravitational lensing sounds like to me, with my
Yeah.
research, my personal experiments, and things that I've been doing.
Well,
And yeah,
yeah, it's a play off of even still Newton's idea and conception of the ether. If you look at his idea of the ether, he talks about each mass or each body having some sort of indentation in the ether being more or less rarefied based on the distance from the surface or the meniscus of that object. Kind of the same as when you have a bowl of Cheerios in cereal. I know this isn't going to fully be the best analogy, but it's going to give you two sides of the three-dimensional thing that's taking place. Those Cheerios are going to seek and move towards one another based on their indentation on the meniscus of the milk, right? So when you place them in the milk, they have just, you can see that the meniscus of the milk has bent just on the edge of those things. And as they get close to one another, instead of repulsing, they kind of attract together. That's why your cereal, if you have four pieces of cereal in a bowl, they tend to congregate together within the bowl and not just be separate pieces. And the reason that they do that is because of their indentation within the meniscus of the milk. And I look at what's taking place with something like gravitational lensing or even like the Cavendish experiment, right? It's something similar, but that indentation is just within the, for lack of a better term, background medium, the ether, and that indentation three-dimensionally within the ether is what causes that slight attraction. I think that's really what is taking place. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. I think you and I should definitely have a discussion, possibly in a private chat or something sometime where we can spin off some ideas, because it's a very interesting discussion. And if I'm not mistaken, Einstein also wasn't 100% sure of what he's presenting. He had the theory, or I'm sure he's 99.9% sure of what he's presenting mathematically, but the explanation is open to interpretation, which is pretty cool. And when I started looking into refraction a few years back, and doing my own experiments, I could see the correlation between the two, and then the understanding of, oh, um, learning it, the understanding of the way our realm is actually presented in waves, not physical items. It's not like there's pieces of sand on the beach that's being put next to each other, and then eventually you get a sandcastle. No, it's all vibration, which as a whole is something. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still learning stages.
Yeah, what I have is I mean, there's a lot of similarities and whatnot between um, relativity and the ideas of the ether, right? There are some similarities there. I think it's just an incorrect explanation. I don't think there is a bending of a time component, but there is a bending of like a spatial component of the ether. Time has, in my opinion, has nothing to do with the equation. That's an incorrect analysis um, by Einstein regarding relativity, at least in my opinion. I don't think there's the time component is not something that is being bent, contracted, any of that. There's a bending and a contraction of a spatial element, but that spatial element is only established by the background medium or the ether to begin with. So it is a spatial element of the ether. You know, the ether under stress or strain is yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, possibly the medium that you're in, you would experience time differently. For instance, in water, things move slower, so your perception of time may be slower. Your watch is now waterproof, so it's going to still move in the time that it is in. So it's still going to say tick at the same speed. But you put that same watch in water, the ticker is going to move a bit slower. I don't know. I'm just spinning something out here just by thought.
Yeah,
Um,
but the object itself moving slower does not quote unquote adjust time, right? I don't think the time is a human construct and a measure, right? And it's just something we use to quantify events
Change
taking
in motion.
place in a linear
Okay.
progression, right? So the time has no ability to be manipulated because time is an establishment of a standard, and that
Yeah,
standard.
it's an experience, and everyone's perception of time will be different. It is just a concept. I don't believe that it is a actual thing, because I think everything is just it, which is the ether, or probably called the ether. But that is always there. Whatever excites it is what it is. But we can measure the length of that wave, or the time, or the amount of ticks it takes for that wave to take its toll, for that experience to take place. Hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, the more dense the medium, the slower that medium travels in. The less dense it is, the faster it travels in, which is now where the concept of time would be faster in a less dense medium than in a more dense medium. But yeah, once again, I say this is still early stages of my research, but I'm very I'm more researched in the all interface layers and things like that, which we had the
Where,
discussion of earlier.
where are you measuring, like, where are you measuring from and to? Like, are you measuring every area around the wave, or are you just measuring like one direction?
The experience of what that wave causes.
In all directions around it, like north, a top, bottom, front, back, side, like six sides, or like one way, front and back, two lines.
Dude, I'm not a millionaire. I've got a small business, and I can only use stuff in my house. But yeah, uh, if you maybe interested in this sort of topic and you're willing to do a GoFundMe or something, or be very sarcastic to ask someone like myself to provide you all that sort of information, dude, I'm not qualified, unfortunately. I'm just sharing my thoughts and experiences.
No, I'm saying, what would you measure? What do you mean qualified? You don't got to be qualified to answer that.
You ask me all sorts of quite a high-end question. I can only do so much, but this is why I say, Napalm, let's have this discussion outside of the Discord. I can't do the tricky questions like this. I can only share
Well,
what I'm sharing.
Have
yeah,
you
but
ever
I'm trying to
thought,
get this
dude?
out there for everybody. When you say
I've,
you're going to measure a wave and you said something about a wave, and I don't know what you're explaining, and I'm just trying to get a better image of it in my head. I'm saying, if I wanted to measure a wave too, or the layman out there, would they want to measure just which way, front and back, or would they want to measure all six sides, like inside of a cube, like the area around what the wave is doing? Or are you just measuring forward? I mean, I just don't
So,
get it.
so cool. So I got a camera in the middle of a pond, and I'm dropping a stone in the middle of the pond. The camera's showing its visual on the middle of the pond. You'll measure from when that wave leaves the stone all the way till when it hits the wall. So what experience happened during that wave? Um, I fucking don't know. All I'm saying is that I don't think that we are experiencing these things because we're experiencing them because they're physical. I think there's things that are there's wave patterns. My eyes are receiving wave patterns. They're not receiving physical things coming to my eye and telling my brain you are touching something. No, there's some sort of wave hitting my eye. So I'm seeing things because I'm in that wave, or that whatever frequencies vibrating at that stage. If something bad happens, I may be perceiving it as bad. Some people don't perceive it as bad, but my brain perceives this vibration as a negative wave. Um, the way I perceive it, I might think of it as a green monster, and someone might see it as roses. I really don't know. Um, Still early stages. I think maybe Carl Jung and someone like that would be awesome to speak to. Unfortunately, they're not around anymore, so I read their books to try and understand how they would explain these sort of experiences. But like I said, still early stages for me. I can only share what I've been researching.
Well, for me, I think it's mechanical. You explained it as a non-mechanical thing hitting your eye. I find that weird, but that's your opinion, and I have mine. So my opinion is it's
Cool.
all mechanical. Light is a mechanical physical thing, right? So is the medium your eye is in right now. When you open it up, and to get the electrical spark to even see, for your brain to get the signal, it has to be mechanical, in my opinion. But go ahead.
No, no, it's fine. If you see it as mechanical, that's awesome. I see it a bit differently. One of us is right or wrong. I don't know which one. Um, but yeah, you only live once. Well, I think we only live once, and I'm trying to get the best experience or understanding of my experience that I can, and I'm trying to do it myself and not ask other people's opinions of what I'm experiencing. But I can most certainly learn from it. If that's the way you experience it, I can learn from that, and maybe one day I can say, "Oh, well, yeah, I see what you mean by the mechanical side. I experience it similarly," and yeah, it's awesome.
So time is just experiential.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's an experience. I don't remember my life before I was born, and it, why am I existing? I don't know, and I remember very few things from my younger years, but I remember quite a lot from my teen years and that. But those were all experiences. How long ago that was can differ because there's times when uh, things felt way longer ago, and it was just like a week ago when I said, "Jesus," it felt like the other day that we saw each other, or whatever. And there's times where it felt forever and it was only a couple of days ago. Giving example, yeah, it's all experience. How you experience that experience. Yeah, yeah, I really don't know. Time is just a concept to me, at least. I'm still trying to understand it. I think the sun is a great way to give an idea of a basic experience. I think the sun is experiencing some circular pattern. If it's revolving around us, or we revolving around it, whichever way it's doing it, it seems like it's on a cyclical pattern. And they've been using the sun to give an idea of time, or an experience. What you experience within that experience is the way you perceive it as the receiver.
Yeah, space and time are not real things. Like they're just concepts that we came up with. Like it's hard to imagine the world without those concepts because that's how we measure like objects, and that's how we quantify passing and stuff. But yeah, they're not like real things. Like if we're gonna define the ether in any way, it can't have those characteristics as to be any real physical things because they're not. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, the reason that they're invoked for relativity is because they're not real things, so they're malleable. They can just do whatever they need them to do to explain their theory, right? It's just like, yeah, it's pretty stupid.
Yeah, the way that relativity
Not
structures it, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but they talk about space in general, meaning some sort of privation. When I was saying that there is a spatial component, right, and not a time component, I was talking about like the spatial geometry component, not necessarily quote unquote space. Does that make sense?
When Einstein spoke of space, what is he speaking of, though? What is the space that he's talking of?
Good question.
A fantasy that he made up in his mind. He took time, he took space, and he made it a fabric. So what he imagines is just a fantasy, not real.
I mean, if he properly wanted to give some sort of like he's saying space and time, right? You could say spatial and counter spatial, right? Like those two things kind of make sense. But to say space in time, space time, I don't even know. I don't know what he's referring to as far as space is concerned.
For me, like I said, it sounds like he's talking about uh, the interface layers, and the way they are shaped towards magnetic fields. Yeah, that's what it sounds like when he talks about it. But he doesn't say that's what it is. But if I had to try understand it when I read what he presents, that's what it sounds like.
When he does the space time, that's made so they can mishmash it, they can stretch it, bend it, do as they will with it. That's the whole idea of that, is not to have something solid, something, you know, first order. It's got to be reference frame and nonsense, so you can always play around with it and do what you wish with it.
I don't think Einstein wanted to do that. I think he came up with an idea, presented it, and I think today's people are taking advantage of it and doing with what they want to do, or whoever's running this place that we're in at the moment. I think they are manipulating Einstein's work for their own benefit.
What work? He has no work. Everything he has, he stole it, and it doesn't make any sense. What work? What would you attribute to Einstein?
Yeah, whatever he presented, I would say, is being used in a manipulative way.
Well, he told us that you can take space, time, put it together, make a fabric. He gave us relativity. He gave us things that shrink when they move fast. He gave us things that expand when they move fast.
Bubble gum.
Nonsense. Yeah.
Space-time
Absolute
bubble gum.
nonsense. Yeah.
He shared his
What do you
ideas.
think the thread count is on that fabric?
What he did was, bro, he set back physics like 100 years with this nonsense that he came up with. Unless I missed something, I don't know.
I was just thinking about light. We're talking about light traveling, and they talk about these distant whatevers, and they need the light's not reached as yet, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I was thinking about they need the universe to be expanding, everything moving away from each other for that reason, don't they? Because why is space dark otherwise? Why would it ever be nighttime? I was thinking of this. It's called something like Obler's paradox or something like that. And I was probably giving it more thought than I should, to be honest.
The fact of the matter is, time is not a material thing. So, I mean, that just debunks relativity. Einstein trying to make you think that things are fucking whatever. I mean, time is not a physical thing. So, yeah.
Exactly, well said. And you can't take that non-physical thing and then take well, call it what you want, the thing between me and you, and mesh it with this thing. It's like taking a unicorn and air and making something. like literally, that's what it is.
Well, I understand you guys might not think that time is a physical thing, but in modern science, time is an actual dimension. So, yeah, you can warp it and you can do whatever the fuck you want with it,
Yeah,
You
in
can't just say
imagination.
that, bro. You can't just say.
Show us time, please.
Okay, well, the reason that time is a dimension in modern science is because you can measure your position in time relative to someone else. It's not everyone experiences time exactly the same. It's depending on certain conditions, you can measure yourself relative to someone else, same as you can measure yourself on a tape measure relative to someone else.
Do you know
So
what?
are you trying to tell
Sorry,
me?
please.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Are you trying to tell me that I can remove the wrinkles from my face?
No, of course not.
Okay, so what are you trying to say here?
Okay, well, what makes a dimension is literally the fact that you can measure yourself relative to something else. So if you put out a tape measure all the way across the floor, you stand on it at 10 meters, your buddy stands on it at 20 meters, you can say, I am 10 meters left of my buddy, relative to my buddy. And you can do the same. In modern science, by the way, you don't have to, I'm just saying, for modern science, you can do the same for time. You can say, I am 1 second ahead or behind of X.
No, you're just measuring the distance between someone. You are not explaining to me how I can remove the wrinkles from my face.
That's not what we say, though. That is a straw man, though. I don't know if you
Excuse me,
understand.
hold on a
Hold on. You're
second.
never 1
Hold on a
second
second.
behind.
Nobody speak here right now. I'm trying to talk. Time, you cannot manipulate time. You cannot change time. You cannot turn back time. You cannot go forward in time. You cannot go back in time. It is impossible. So whatever you are trying to fucking reify here is a load of bullshit.
He said time is a measuring tape.
So,
It can't be.
so when you said somebody can be 1 second behind somebody else, no, they can be a distance behind somebody else, right? But everybody is always experiencing time as now.
No,
So
that's
how
the
can
point.
somebody be
No,
a second ahead or a second behind somebody else? Can you explain that to me?
yeah, okay. So
Exactly. If I could turn back time, I can remove the wrinkles from my face. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
okay, well, like I said, I'm not trying to say that this is something you have to believe in, but as in, if we go by modern science, under special relativity, depending on your speed, you move through time differently. So literally, two people can be 1 second ahead or behind each other, depending on their speed and the amount of time they've traveled at that speed.
You are trying to turn back time. It
Hold on.
does not work that way. That is not reality.
That's not what I'm trying to do, though, bro. This is a
Explain that
straw
Well,
again.
man.
what are you trying to say then?
Okay, so under special relativity,
No, hold on a second. You are saying we can turn back time and we can go
that's
ahead of time.
brother,
So
that's not
we
what I'm
can
saying. Could you,
remove the wrinkles from our faces.
dude?
Let
Isn't
him
that
That's
right?
not
respond.
what I'm
Let him
saying.
respond.
Isn't that right?
Okay, so under special relativity, two people can travel through time at different rates. So, depending on the rate at which you're traveling through time, you can measure your time relative to someone else. And you can be a second ahead, a second behind, whatever.
So I can go back now and remove the wrinkles from my face.
You can't,
No,
dude,
that
you
is
can't
not what
change
I'm saying.
time. Listen. You notice something that's happening, right? You call that time. That thing is happening with or without you or anybody. It cannot be manipulated. It's like trying to stop the sun. You can't do that, okay? You can't change what the sun's doing. You can't manipulate time or the sun or anything like that, okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I get what you guys are saying, but
Hold
I
on.
was just saying that under modern science, this is what we see it as.
No,
So
the
do we-
problem is you are saying time is a physical thing. It's not. You cannot manipulate time. You cannot take away the wrinkles from your face. If there
Go
are
ahead
wrinkles on your
to
face, they are going to stay there unless you want to go for plastic surgery or whatever the
go
case
ahead,
may be.
Napalm.
And
Go on.
that's not based on time as well.
Yeah, so
Okay.
so I just want you to properly explain what you're talking about when you say that somebody can be a second ahead or a second behind somebody else?
Okay, so I'm going to go tape measure. I think this is a good way to explain it. If it isn't, I'll try and think of something else. But you've set up a tape measure. Your buddy walks at 5 meters per second and you walk at 10 meters per second. After 10 seconds, you stop. Both of you guys stop. You can say that, oh, your buddy has traveled X meters more than you, so he is X meters ahead of you relative to you, yeah?
Sure.
On that tape measure. So the same thing is true for time. Two different people, depending on their speeds, travel through time at different rates. So if someone's moving at the speed of light and someone is moving at 0.9 times the speed of light for both for 10 seconds, after those 10 seconds, if both of them stop, there will be a difference in the amount of time that they've traveled. So, same as on the tape wire, you can say someone is ahead of the other person by X amount of time.
The only problem is you have no established science to back up your claim, and people can't travel at the speed of light.
Right, that's fine. I was just saying that that's what modern science says.
Right, but it's just conceptual, right? Go ahead and play it, Aaron. Go ahead.
Yeah, in what part of this world do you live?
Well, look, I was just trying to say that is our modern understanding.
Do you live in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere?
I don't know. I think I live in the northern hemisphere.
Okay, I live in the southern hemisphere. So tell me, how are you going to try and measure what I do in the southern hemisphere?
What? No offense, but what does this have to do with what I said? What I was just trying to explain is why we see.
How are you going to try and measure what I do in the southern hemisphere?
All I was trying to explain is why we in modern science don't see it as a concept. It is an actual dimension because you can measure your position.
I'm not asking you what your pseudoscience fucking scientists tell you. I'm asking you what I am doing at this current moment in the southern hemisphere on your globe.
Malfunction, cannot answer questions, malfunction.
That's not helping, Rob. So pick a username. You have no scientific evidence to back up this claim that time speeds up or slows down for people at all, right? It's just a conceptual abstract model that has no basis or tie to reality. So there still has been no proper explanation for me as to where somebody can be a second ahead or a second behind. I get that people can be physically ahead and physically behind of people based on a tape measure. But as far as time is concerned, there's been no establishment at all whatsoever that can take place. I can pull out a tape measure and I can say that this person relative to this pole is, closer and this other person is further away relative to this pole, right? If that's what we're measuring to. But as far as time is concerned, the measurement of time is just an established standard of how fast something ticks. It actually started with the movement of the celestial bodies, particularly the sun. That is what caused us to be able to start to conceptualize what we call time. And the first measure was based on these movements of the celestial bodies. So regardless of how fast I'm going or somebody else is going, the movement of those bodies are always going to be the same.
Yeah, man, I get what you're saying.
The other thing is, I'm here in the southern hemisphere on this supposed ball, okay? And I'm looking up at the sky. Meanwhile, Picky Username is looking up at the same sky. Can you explain that, Picky Username?
Isn't he in the northern hemisphere, though?
Yeah. So Picky Username, you also... I got to ask something after this.
And I'm looking at the same sky as Picky username. Can you explain that?
Boys, no offense, I'm not today, but maybe some other time. But as in, I haven't come here to start an argument or debate. Plainer, stop. Plainer,
I'm looking at
no
the same
offense, but you've
sky
been
as
interrupting
you
me this
from the
entire time.
southern
Stop.
I'm looking at the same sky as you from the southern hemisphere on your supposed ball.
Plainer, you've interrupted me this entire time. Can you stop now?
Yeah, Plainer, it sounds like he doesn't want to engage. So people, on this server, you're not forced to engage with anybody. And he's just kind of asking you nicely, it sounds like he just doesn't want to engage.
Yeah, what do you mean by the same sky? The same bit of sky? I don't quite understand what you're trying to say.
Well, Andy, when you look up, you look at the sky, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in the southern hemisphere and I'm looking up at the sky.
Uh-huh.
But you also know that your limits of perspective are shorter.
The people in the northern hemisphere are looking up and looking at the sky.
Fuck, he left. And I had such a cool question for him. But anyways.
Andy,
if anybody, sorry.
Understand, I'm in the southern hemisphere.
Oh boy.
And I'm looking up at the sky. The people in the northern hemisphere are looking up and looking at the sky.
Yes, they are. You're right. What's the point?
They're looking at a different bit of sky. I think that's
because that's like and Plainer, the issue on the table is like for you, it's going to be a different time. For the people that are, it's the same time but a different time reference. Like it could be daylight, nightlight, different changes depending on the hemisphere location. The personal azimuthal reference, the skydome, if you will, is different for people who are in the southern versus the northern hemisphere. Hell, you could even be sitting on the equator line, right, and observing a mixture, quote, of both. Please go ahead.
Well, on a ball, I mean, on the southern hemisphere, on a ball, I'm looking in a different direction to the people in the northern hemisphere.
Well, yeah, but the issue that we were discussing prior to this is the concept of time and how time can exist as a concept, or is it just simply a measurement of like an extrapolation of the celestial body's movement? That's what we were trying to figure out initially before Pick a Username dipped.
Well, Pick a Username just left, so because when I tried to what you call it,
engage with him, he asked you not to.
Yeah, when I tried to engage with him, when I questioned him, he left.
Right.
Because I mean, with you guys in America, you looking up at the sky, and I'm in the southern hemisphere. I'm also looking up at